I really want to know what Black London used to be like.
Same.
I kind of imagine it being like kind of cool.
I was really sad that we didn't get to see it in the end.
Yeah.
Because the whole time he's like, I've got to go to Black London.
It's like, it's probably like this like heaven.
It's probably just super grandiose.
Like this paradise.
Right? Well,
people are like,
yeah,
shit, this is what it is. So Black London has created this history of universes.
Love that.
And so that they can live in peace.
God, that'd be so nice. They faked their own death.
Like Black London is just like, it's just like magic and like glitter. You know, it's just like this magical land.
Everyone poops fairies and butterflies. Yeah.
Welcome back. This is In Bed with Books with your hosts, Bethany
and Melissa. Today we are talking about the first book in the Darker Shades trilogy by V.E. Schwab, and we are joined by a special guest, a friend of mine.
Yay!
Hi, everyone. Taylin Nelson here. Lovely to be here. Very excited. I'm a personal fan of In Bed with Books, in part because I helped come up with the name.
Yeah,
so, true. I forgot about that.
No, I'm really happy to be here. I am Melissa's friend, longtime friend. You could even say best friend.
Well, you've seen me naked, so.
No going back from that. It's best all the way. And also, for any of those who don't already know, I am also her roommate. So
yeah,
we live together in Houston in a big house with a green yard. The perfect dream.
She's the owner of all of the cats that I post on the Instagram because I don't have any of my own. So the small gremlin, Seymour, and the beautiful angel that is Franny are both her babies.
They are, yes, and very, very proud to have them featured because the world needs to see their beauty.
Yes, truly.
So I know a little bit about you, Taylin. I know that you're Gemini, and I have a lot of Gemini, so I feel like we will be best friends. But what else is there about you that we should know?
Yes, well, guilty as charged. I'm a Gemini, not a femini.
We haven't had anything to drink. No,
not yet.
Not yet. Just the coffee. I am, unlike you two, sadly, I am not yet a recovering academic. Unless you can be a recovering academic while still being in academia, I'm not sure that's possible. So I'm still, still in the rat race. Not sure if I'm living the dream or not, but I'm out here in Houston. I'm doing a PhD in literature at Rice University, and in my second year. So the last year was just all online, which, a lot of people had to experience. Not super fun, but, I'm glad that I'm out here. I'm really grateful that I'm in a program because I know a lot of schools had to, unfortunately, not accept students this last year. So it's really good in that respect. I'm glad that I was able to get into a program before all this kind of happened. But, yeah, I actually went to King's College London where both Melissa and Bethany met. I was there the year before both of them.
Arguably, if you hadn't gone, I wouldn't have met Bethany.
Whoa.
Because I wouldn't have gone to the program either.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you were in the same program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like Taylin, you helped me get into King's.
I don't know if I helped. I just kind of gave you the info and you did the rest.
You completely helped me rewrite my application.
I don't know. I don't remember that. I don't remember sitting in the Starbucks doing that. I don't know what you're talking about.
I just remember the whole year, Melissa would be like, well, my friend Taylin.
Damn.
No, she would just be like, well, Taylin said about the program. No.
When Taylin did it last year.
We all knew Taylin very well.
Okay, to be fair, also all of the professors talked about you at some point. If I brought up that I knew you, like they didn't let us forget. They were like, well, you're kind of like Taylin. I see it. And I'm like, we're not related.
Oh my God. That's terrible. It's just all of our childhood years in theater coming back to haunt us. We have the same mannerisms. So we're both very American in the sense that we are talking with our hands and talking a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, we have opinions.
Yes, we got things to say.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's always a big shock, I think.
Yes, for sure. Agreed.
But yeah, it's kind of fun sometimes to just be like, just be put in the group of the Americans. It's kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of funny. I remember going to a party over there with Vinny, and I think it was a Eurovision party, and we were walking up the stairwell. Someone had let us in, just a stranger, someone from the party, and someone yelled out like, who's there? And the girl said, oh, just some Americans. And we were just so excited to just be classed that way. It was just so different for a second, But yes, I wish I'd been in the program same year as you guys, because that would have been really fun.
That would have been super rad.
It was a big year though. I think we've realized like between literally you the year before and us, the program doubled in size.
Yeah, we had 17.
19. I think we started with 20.
Yeah, I think we had 9 and it was already a lot. But imagine how much fun we would have had.
Yeah.
Like romping all over London.
Yeah.
That year. That would have just been so great. Yes. Through the Londons.
Literally.
Through all Londons.
Yes. So that is why I was so excited to read the series, because I was like, I just want to go back. I don't care what color. I don't care what color it's in.
Like, I feel 100% like the stereotype of like the girl who traveled and studied abroad for a semester in Europe. And I'm like, first of all, I didn't study abroad. I was an international student, technically.
What?
Second of all, there's a reason that's a stereotype. It's very rooted in truth. I cannot shut up about when I went to London.
I tell everyone that I meet my chiropractor, the guy at the coffee shop. Everyone knows. They didn't ask. I just tell them.
You sound like my mom.
I'm the same. I'm like, well, when I lived in London.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I moved from Stratford to Hackney. But like Hackney Central.
This is how the British hear our accents. This is what they hear when we speak.
Yeah.
We sound like we're from like the OC or something.
Okay. So first thoughts on the book.
Well, I think I'm really excited to be here today to like talk about this book, because actually like it's kind of perfect, because I actually, haven't read YA for a really long time, and I didn't even know about like adult fiction, if that makes sense, like adult fantasy fiction. I didn't know that even existed until I read this book a year ago. And so this is like really exciting, because it was kind of like my first reawakening, my realization that this genre even existed, And so that was really exciting for me to kind of like come to this book and book series, and I couldn't put it down. I mean, I blew through all of them like so fast, but yeah, like kind of, same as you, Bethany, same as you, Melissa, like I really enjoy obviously like being in a book that has multiple Londons. Like that's pretty cute and pretty cool. I think like, what my favorite part is obviously Lila. She's such a cool character and just so inspiring, someone that you want to be, like I think she really makes the whole book series. I'm not going to like give away any secrets for 2 or 3. Obviously I'm going to try to like keep my facial expressions and my voice, even so that, if you have your theories, I won't give anything away. Yeah, I think this book is like, I think it's really interesting because it's kind of blending a lot of different, maybe other fantasy books and TV shows like from my childhood. Like sometimes it reminds me of Avatar: The Last Airbender with some of the like magical kind of ability to control the elements. And then at other times, it's reminding me of maybe like Harry Potter with this kind of world making.
Mm-hmm.
What did you guys think?
So I also loved that it was multiple Londons. I did enjoy the style was very 18th century at times. Like the writing style even. Like she really got into it.
And we know 18th century.
Oh, we know.
Yeah, we know.
I guess we didn't mention that, but that is the course we took.
Oh yeah.
18th century studies, so get ready.
Strap in.
And so this was kind of like, this was a topic that we had covered in Serpent and Dove, which was the kind of concept of fate within the story. And so I really love that that's kind of an underlying like fate or like destiny kind of things, because there's all of these parallels between Kel and Lila that happen throughout the story. I love that she keeps that consistent, I guess, throughout the whole thing. It's not just kind of like this fun coincidence.
It's intentional.
Yes, exactly.
It absolutely is. You're totally right. She is. I really like the way she, like, as you say, it kind of interweaves that into the story. And it's something that's really exciting throughout. And I will say that I don't think any character is kind of like unnecessary or won't serve kind of like a bigger purpose, which is something that's also really important to me in a story. Like when you introduce a character, it's not like you're just kind of, I don't know, they're passing by. Like they all have real character and a real purpose in the story. And I think that's really good.
My thoughts. Well, I just finished it like 10 minutes ago, I think, before this call. So it's super, super fresh. And yeah, definitely fell in love with the covers. I've kind of had my eyes on these books for a while. They just look really cool. And you can tell like a lot of love went into them. And what I really gravitated towards in the book was the conversations that Lila and Kel would have together about living and about death and the dichotomy between how they both approach that in their lives. Mm-hmm. But I definitely felt 18th century like steampunk to me.
Yes.
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
I was super into it. And I just love like kind of the emphasis on objects and the things to get you through different Londons and collecting them. And like that felt very 18th century, but also very like the important candles in a magical world, you know?
Yeah. Like, what's more 18th century than a collector?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Melissa's going to take us along the ride. She has notes.
So Kel, I would argue, is like the main character.
Yeah.
And so Kel is this prince/ward. Like, it seems like the king and the queen really want him to think of himself as part of the family, but they kind of also don't really treat him as part of the family. They treat him like, he kind of describes it as just being a piece in their collection, which is really sad.
Yeah, I think it's like when it suits them,
they
will treat him magnanimously. But when it doesn't suit them, he is an outsider.
Yeah.
But Rye definitely like fought for him. He does see him as family. And I think that was made clear towards the end of the book. And I was like, oh, okay. That Rye definitely fought to have him be more part of the family than possession.
Him having to call the king and queen mother is like more a result of arguing, basically. And I'm sure it helped that they were raised together. And so for them, for the king and the queen, it's nothing. It's just this kid who I'm assuming they stole somehow.
Yeah, have you got any info on his backstory at all?
No, all we know from book one is that he has like a memory blocking charm on his elbow, is it?
Oh, that's right.
And then his knife has K and L on it.
Yes.
Which he's
assuming, and that's where he gets his name, essentially.
Yeah, because they're kind of assuming that it's supposed to be his initials.
And then he just goes by Kel.
Yeah. Because why not have his real name? That'd be too normal. So Kel has been raised alongside the prince. He's tall and quirky and kind of auburn ginger, and he's got one black eye. And the black eye is what shows that he's Antari, which means he can travel between the different Londons.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, essentially, like, the Antari, there used to be more of them kind of before Black London fell and magic kind of devoured them. But the Antari are essentially these extremely powerful magicians, I suppose, who are able to control all 5 elements, right? Mm-hmm. So there's wind, water, earth, fire, and bone. And so he's like one of very few left. So he is that, I think that does kind of make him a bit of an outsider even more. The fact that there are not anyone of his kind even left, really.
Yeah. And you see that in those first couple of chapters when he starts traveling around Red London, because once they realize who he is, like once they see his eye, the eye becomes a symbol of him being this protected property of the crown, not of him being an Antari for them.
Yeah.
Which is funny because I'm sure at some point it would have been a respected symbol.
Well, and he always covers it with his hair.
Yeah, because he's got to be emo. He's got to have his side set.
I know.
Things.
I'm not complaining.
Yeah, when he looked in the mirror. Okay, first, let me just say I am so jealous of his jacket. I would kill.
Oh, yeah.
Multi-reversible jacket that changes for each occasion. That is like my dream come true. But one of my favorite kind of first scenes of him is where he's looking in the mirror and he's like fixing his jacket. He sees that his hair is in his eyes. He's about to meet King George III and he doesn't fix it.
No, fuck no. Plus, King George III is really sad.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'd want to look at him with both eyes anyway.
Remind me, what London was that?
That was Grey London. So that was ours.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So for those of you who like are maybe less familiar with kind of Georgian history, I mean, who knows how many listeners are quite familiar with that? But actually, V.E. Schwab is kind of pulling from history here, and so like the king who's kind of imprisoned in Windsor Palace is actually based off of or inspired by like King George III, who was also called the Mad King. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Since we've got like his son rolling now and he's imprisoned, it also kind of dates the book too.
Yeah.
So the assumption is that this is basically an historical retelling.
Yeah.
So we know that King George is alive. He's probably old as dirt by this point. George IV.
And there's Georgie.
Yeah.
He's still the Prince Regent.
Exactly.
And still a dick, just like he was in real life.
Yep. But also, so I guess Kell's also just like a very good person, sometimes to his detriment, until he meets Lila. He's just so trusting. And I do, on some level, agree with kind of what Holland says to him later in the book. But Holland's like, the reason you're so weak is because you've never had to be strong. You've never had to fight for your life. And like, it's true. Mm-hmm. If Lila hadn't been there, he would have died like 4 times already. Because he was raised in a palace. And like, yeah, he gets to travel around. And I'm not diminishing how emotionally hard it must have been to not feel like you're actually part of the family that you're a part of. But he hasn't had to ever physically fight for his life. His magic has been all fun leading up to that point.
Yeah, and they directly like address that, like Lila and him. And that's why I like their conversation so much, because it brings the root of like where he's coming from, where she's coming from, because she also presses that to her detriment. She says, don't take pity on me. Yeah. And then she takes pity on him. So yeah. like, okay, it's a good conversation. I liked it.
Yes, I love that conversation because they're kind of coming from the same like emotional point, but in very different contexts.
Yeah.
Which is why there's such a good kind of pair.
Yeah.
Because she really kind of pushes him to learn how to fight for something.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And to learn to stop being so fucking trusting. Like, okay, so there's this very specific line. What page is it? I've got it in here. Hold on. Here we go. Okay, so in chapter, like, section 10, right when they've been caught, because they went to, like, Fletcher to try to get the White Rook, right? It says, so Fletcher was saying something to him, gesturing at his palm in the universal sign for payment. The guard nodded, and his hand went to his belt as Fletcher turned to watch Kel through the window. Lila saw it coming. Fletcher never did. Instead of reaching for a purse, the guard went for a blade. The metal glinted once in the shop's low light, and then it was under Fletcher's chin, drawing a silent red line across his throat. It switches over to Kel's point of view. And then in the next paragraph-ish, it says, the last had stayed behind to talk to Fletcher and most likely settle the matter of payment. And so, it doesn't even cross Kel's mind not to trust these people. He's already come across multiple of those things that have been possessed across all of the Londons. And so he should have 100% been far more suspicious of anyone whose eyes he couldn't see.
I would say he's more blinded by Ree's loyalty over everything else. And that's why he's just not paying attention, because he's like, oh, Ree will know what to do once he gets in.
The Knights aren't run by Ree.
But he doesn't know that.
No. I mean, the Knights are under the King and Queen.
Yeah, but Ree's his way in with royalty.
No. I know that. I'm just saying, I don't mean trusting as in he'll walk up to anyone on the street and trust them. I say trusting as in it didn't occur to him to be wary, even though he's under attack. That's why he couldn't go to the castle.
Yes.
He knew that he was carrying danger with him.
Yes, I agree with that. And I think part of why that is because of his need to see good in people more, or at least Ree. And that was kind of his way, yeah. So, and then it even happens with the stone.
Yeah. The stone's actually also a really good example, because from the get-go with the stone, Lila's that stone's not dangerous, that stone is clever, and that's worse. And he's just I can use it one more time. It's fine. I can use it once more. It won't hurt me. Because he genuinely, he just doesn't think evil exists half the time, even though he's got it fused to his hand.
Well, and he is even the one reinstating all of the time that this isn't good magic.
Yeah.
Magic, you have to be careful.
It's because he thinks he's different and special.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, he is different and special, but it also got to his head, I think.
Yeah.
He could think that he's more impervious to it because he's Antari.
Yeah. But as we saw, he was not. But Lila.
Yes! But Lila, my dream girl. The girl I want to be when I grow up.
I love a good, female cross-dresser.
Yes.
Super into it.
Literally my goal in life, to be wearing a top hat and a big coat, walk around, helping ladies.
Pipe optional.
Pickpocketing them.
Seriously, just really pickpocketing them. I love that.
I love that she was just unabashedly violent and sketchy sometimes even.
Absolutely. I think she's the main character, personally. I would make an argument that this story is 100% becomes interesting when we're introduced to her, and only becomes more interesting when her and Kel meet.
Yes, that was a huge part of the book for me. I was like, finally! And then within the same chapter, he's like, I've been robbed. She steals shit. Stone from him.
I feel like she's a side character with main character mentality. She refuses to accept that she's not the main character.
Yeah.
And respect, honestly.
Yeah. I gotta tell you. Yeah. I mean, let's talk about the incredible moment when she's come home from a long day of pickpocketing and is on her little boat home that she's renting from, what's that guy's name?
Powell.
Renting from Powell. And this is pretty soon in the book, right? I think we've only known her for a couple of pages.
Yeah.
And by the end of this chapter, she has murdered her would-be rapist.
Yeah.
As Melissa calls it. And burned, what would you say? Burned the entire ship.
Yeah. She has more regret for burning the ship than she does for him. And I support that.
The only thing I wish she had done in that scene was go to his bedchambers and make sure that he didn't have any extra gold or money.
Yeah, I was like, what? She should have just
Double
took
check.
everything from the joint.
Yeah. She's paid him. There's bound to be money in there. There's bound to be goods in there, yeah.
But it was such an entrance. I mean, it was so incredible. I didn't expect like that kind of character development to be happening so quickly in the book.
I think what was funny is that, like, as I was reading that and you get, like, kind of the image of her walking away from the burning ship, it felt very much like an action movie when, like, the guy blows up a building and then, like, walks away all cool from his damage.
Very cinematic moment. I actually would love to just, like, say really quickly that something that I love about V.E. Schwab's writing style, and you can see this in a lot of her other books, is, like, as she progresses in her writing, she will just kind of become super sort of cinematic and kind of have really quick kind of phrases that kind of you hang on to every word that's being written.
Yeah.
And it's really kind of very tense and there's a lot of buildup going on and it's very fast paced. I really, really enjoyed that as like a 21st century reader who binge watches a lot of television.
Yeah, I agree. I felt like the writing style with this book was very much like small scenes.
Yes.
That were very tight and divisive. Like everything had a purpose. Like you said, every character has a purpose.
Yeah.
Every sentence has a purpose. Like I don't feel there's like any fluff. And I like that a lot. It's easier to read. It was so much easier to read than a lot of other books in like even YA and new adult. It was very refreshing. She's a very good writer.
She had this kind of benefit of being able to avoid info dumping because when we're first introduced to everything, we're introduced to it through Grey London, which is the London that we're technically familiar with. And so she was able to kind of drop that in a familiar environment.
Yeah. And then everything was distinguished against Grey London because that's what we did know.
Yeah.
I want to talk a bit more about Lila, though.
For sure. I'm down.
I really liked her code of living, like being a thief, but then she actually was going to pay Calla back for those clothes. And it's almost like she lives in this underground, I want to say it's kind of political. Like she feels like thieving is her right.
Yeah.
But then she also has like this code. She still has respect. She has she does not care about murdering that man.
Yeah.
But she did care about Kel. Yes, she's like rough and gruff and you think, oh, a thief, she's got probably really, gray morals, but really she doesn't.
No. I think it's one of those things where it's like morality is not defined by legality. Like she has very firm morals and she is a good person. Like I would not describe her as a bad person.
No. Yeah.
I do think it is political though, as well. And I think you can see that in like who she steals from. Like she says in the very beginning, I don't steal from the poor. I steal from the rich, right? It's a kind of Robin Hood kind of storyline there. I mean, she's kind of like the anti-hero in that way. And you could even think back to the scene where she like sees this kind of really ragged, hungry boy sitting on the street and gives him some, some money, a coin or whatever. And then these other kind of bigger, meaner street boys like steal the money from them and she goes after them. So there is this kind of moral compass like guiding her,
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I love it is she's not afraid to murder if she has to. Like that's kind of how much grit she has.
She kind of has this moment, like she pauses after she kills Powell. And I wouldn't call it regret for killing him, but I would say that there's part of her that's kind of like frustrated that she lives in a world where she has to, which is why I think she was so eager when he was like, there's a different London. And she was like, well, sign me the fuck up. Like, I need out of this one.
Yeah. And I think burning the ship was like very much like
symbolic,
erasing that.
Yeah. There's this line that she has when she kind of goes over her code where, and I can't find it right now, but she talks about feeling safe. And the reason it's so easy for her to steal from the rich is because they always feel safe. People who don't feel safe, like the poor, protect their shit.
Yeah.
And so I do love that she's not willing to hurt the security of the poor in the same way.
Well, and so this is kind of part of the dichotomy I was talking about with Kel and Lila. I wrote in my margins because I don't write in books normally. And I did in this book because I was like, this is a good book. But I said, Kel seems to think that Lila doesn't value life because she wants to put it in danger, when in fact, he doesn't value it because he doesn't live. So it's like he's just trying to be safe from death. So he's cleaving to safety, whereas she's cleaving to actual life. And so then in like, who's actually living, right?
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, she's more free than he is.
Absolutely. And that's why, I mean, not to spoil anything, but the end of the book, right? Like, that's why it really like shocks him that she doesn't look back at him. Because like, you know, my fiance was saying this earlier. I'm going to cite him on this. Like, but he made this point, and I thought it was so good because like, really, Cal is the only person that she knows in this city. He is kind of the safe harbor of this new, like, London or wherever that she has to live in. And she doesn't look back. You know, she just walks forward. And I think that the way that we see it, that moment striking Kel really shows that kind of philosophy.
I also just love the image of him standing there staring at her and her just leaving.
I imagine her like, you know, because it says she like pops her collar up.
Yeah.
So she just kind of like puts her hands in her pockets. And I just see her like whistling and just like, walking off, you know, like just like very like, I'm fine.
Like, she's so excited for this new adventure, and he's just lost the only thing that made him interesting.
So true.
And what's interesting too is that like she's the one that is actually like, at least in the points of view, she's the only one that is actually realizing how much she cares about him. Yeah. Whereas Kel's not really giving that off.
Yeah.
As much, like in the internal dialogue, right? And so I find that interesting. I was actually kind of surprised that she walked away, but it was more, I think, a testament to her character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like realizing, oh, but that's her home. That's her safety, is freedom and going where she wants.
Yeah.
And later, you know that she's going to be like, something's missing, and like want to go back, right?
Don't get my hopes up.
Hopefully.
That. Let's just say she's true to character.
Okay.
Does Kel go after her? Don't tell me.
So I would kind of say that there's like inklings of Kel's feelings for Lila, because they're like the conversation actually that you had talked about earlier, when the one time when it's very explicitly stated between them, the differences that they've lived, he says something along the lines of like, and in an instant, the scared street rat was gone and the cutthroat was back.
Yep.
But he was relieved to see her back in threatening form. And so I think he does appreciate what she adds to his life. And it's like, okay, how could you say that you don't love somebody when you were able to tell that it was really Astrid and not Lila?
Because you didn't say, please.
Yeah, it's like, how do you know her that well already? You must be really paying attention to her, huh? Yeah, he's got his eye. He's definitely got his eye on her. And then, this is just like a small, cute detail, but one of the first things that he says to her once he like comes to on her bed, tied to her bed, is that her eyes are two different shades of brown. And so when we find out later from Master Taylin, that it's not her real eye, she makes that comment to herself where she's like, people don't normally notice, but Kel noticed.
Yeah. Only people who really look into her eyes notice. And so it was the first thing he did.
Yeah.
Which is also saying something, since she usually has her hair in her face.
Or the
I think
hat.
She wanted him to like see her face if she was going to have to kill him.
Or so she thought. But instead, she just made his shadow self do a striptease.
Yeah.
I loved that scene, because I love that he's tied and then he just like stays tied. And then later's just like, shh.
Yeah.
He had total control of the situation the whole time, but he just like, so dramatic.
He's like, how much of an entrance can I possibly make?
Yeah.
And so he waits till like the opportune moment to burn his vines.
and then later bind her with the
Yes.
wall. Which
Yes.
I like that trick. That's cool.
Mhm. I immediately was like, when they first met, which is like honestly my favorite chapter.
Yeah.
But like when they first met, I loved how much he said her name.
Yes.
Like immediately it was just like Lila. Like he doesn't know her at all, but he's just like wants to say her name all the time. That's so sweet.
So there's a lot of literary parallels between them. And then there's a lot of like kind of fate things happening that lead them to the same places. But one of my favorites like is that when we first meet them, they're both running. So she was running, chasing those 3 street rats and then running from them.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's running from the people that are trying to steal the stone, right?
Yeah.
And so our introduction to them meeting is them running from something. And granted, he's able to run a little farther because he can run into Grey London. But they literally run into each other as they're running away from something. And then before this, so a lot of times it'll happen kind of as like the 2 sections kind of next to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll get like his little paragraph on it and then her little paragraph on it. But he's got the one where he talks about his knife and it's got the initials for his name on it. And he doesn't know what the initials actually stand for. At the same time that she's looking at the silver pocket watch and she thinks it's pretty and it's got these initials on it and she doesn't know what these initials actually stand for.
Yeah.
And like in some way, like obviously that's meaningless. It speaks more about each of their individual characters, but I like that we kind of have those parallel scenes like running throughout the book against each other because you get to see the ways that they're similar and the ways that they're different.
Which is why I would argue that they're both the main character.
Point of view number 3, yes. We're hitting all our bases.
It's Rye, you guys. The name is Rye.
He's the main character.
Yeah.
He's the prince. They literally threw a party for him. We just got the background noise.
I low-key love that he just wants like everyone to be naked.
Yeah. Everyone's going to wear costumes that are layers. But you take the layers off.
He just wants sauce. He's so saucy.
Even as much as Kel likes him.
At first I didn't like him. I didn't know if we were supposed to like him or not.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
And then, yeah.
It was a massive red herring.
Yeah.
Because they keep throwing in like the comments about like, where would he be if he'd had magic or if he hadn't been the prince? I 100% thought that he was the villain, that he was orchestrating stuff.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Maybe that never crossed my mind because I truly like felt so connected to Ree. I was like, yeah, this is me. So I mean,
you just want everyone to be naked.
Myself being the villain. I can only see myself being like the fun, saucy main character, side character.
Kel describes him as like he'll fuck anything that breathes.
So point of view number 3 though, I actually thought Ree was like a problem. Like he wasn't divisive, like he wasn't malicious or like doing anything, but that he was just getting in the way of what Kel would need. Yeah. So that's kind of what I was kind of thinking he was going to be. But he ended up being like a really good asset to Kel.
Yeah.
So I was pleasantly surprised.
The most important person in his life, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was really seen with his like need to save his life.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue that those aren't 2 different things, though. It does seem like there's times when Kel's love for Ree gets in the way. That being said, the lesson kind of at the end ends up being that White London's version of controlling magic and making it submit to you is bad anyway. Mm-hmm. So Kel's philosophy is generally a better one to begin with. So I think it's at least in the first book, it's a very open-ended kind of like how much of a problem could Ree be for Kel?
Well, now that they're bound together.
Yeah.
I mean, a big problem.
Yeah. So.
It's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out.
For sure.
I do think we should take a moment to talk about Holland.
Yes. Ooh, I loved Holland. I mean, like all the other books, I love having a villain to hate. The thing is, I don't.
You didn't really
Holland.
hate him. Yeah.
No, it felt very like, for any listeners that watch Marvel, it felt very Winter Soldier-y to me because he's not in control of what he's doing. In his core, he's not the type of person to do these things. He's just been forced to. One, by the soul binding, and two, just by the very world in which he exists, because he didn't want the crown, which we like is assumed, and then later the Danes kind of confirm. And so just by the very fact that he doesn't want to take over this world makes him a victim eventually.
It makes you wonder if he was a Kel and he just got wrapped up with these twins.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that that's really true, Bethany, because like I think there's a moment where, you know, Kel, it's when Kel is kind of in, it's the first time we're seeing him in White London, and he's like seeing the Dane twins kind of, you know, subject Holland to having to cut himself in front of them and pour it into the cup because they believe that the magic is in the blood or whatever. And Kel kind of reflects for a moment, really kind of deeply, about the fact that their positions could have easily been switched. He could have been the one that was in, you know, like stuck in White London, born in White London, and Holland could have been the one that kind of got to be raised in this really privileged upbringing.
Yeah.
And I think he even suggests like that he regrets not speaking up in that moment, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that was a really heavy scene.
Yeah.
In the same way that he's having to confront, I guess, his ignorance when he's with Lila, he's obviously had to do that with Holland before, because this isn't the first time he's having to go to White London, and it's not the first time he's run into Holland. And so it's probably one of those things that he feels very guilty about. That like reflection that he has when he tries to be like, it could have been either of us, is about the closest that he at that point can get to some kind of like internal conceptualization of his guilt. Because I do think he's emotionally closed off to himself. Like he's guarded. And so I don't think he ever let himself realize how bad he really felt for Holland. Because then what happens after that? You have to do something about it.
I was just going to say, Melissa, that I knew that you would love Holland because he's kind of the, you know, bad boy that you love to meet. I knew right away, especially there's this moment that I really kind of made it clear to me. I was like, yes, this is Melissa's type of character. When he first kind of he finds Lila in the tavern after her run-in with Kel. Kel has just left. He's run away. She's decided to go out and get a drink. And, you know, he drags her outside and says to her, divest yourself of your weapons or I will. I knew that line would get you. I knew it.
Shut up. Maybe it did. Maybe it did.
Just like, okay, sexy.
Yeah, I did love him. What about you, Bethany?
What?
About Holland.
I just thought his his death was like really powerful.
Oh yeah.
And that, okay, so I remember you spoke of the Taylin in the past about the fight scenes in this series. And I was like, wow, like the one with him and Kel was like really intense. And it was just very vivid and like well written. Mm-hmm. But I liked, just like his death and as it being a relief. Because he couldn't, even if he wanted to kill himself, he couldn't really. But there was some Antari power or something that let him not, like, you know what I'm talking about?
It let him pause just long enough that,
to be impaled.
Yeah, that was really dark.
Hello to the new YA.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was talking with Melissa earlier, and we were saying, well, she was saying that you might repeat yourself about the sort of lack of sex in this book, but I was I really think it's the fight scenes and the sort of action,
the rage
for that. The rage, that's what makes up for it, I think.
100%. I think I genuinely believe there's a place for rage. It's not an emotion to be demonized. It's going to exist either way, so you might as well accept it.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have that kind of outlet for it, because when you read smut, when you read like really nasty sex scenes, right? Your sex life isn't always going to be like that. And I don't want to speak for everyone's, but every single time somebody has sex, it's not going to be like that. It's not all going to be like Poppy and Castile having crazy sex constantly. And so when you read smut, it's nice to have that release, that like emotional release that crazy wild sex gives, right? But in the same way, when you read really good battle scenes and you read about like really detailed rage, it's nice to have that outlet.
Yeah, the passion is still there. The emotional outlet is still there.
100%.
I would like to hear what you guys think about the scene between Belloc and Lila.
Oh,
because that was really rough for me.
Yeah, it was funny because it was another parallel, obviously, between Lila and Kel, because you've got them having to fight somebody they don't want to fight, but the only option is to kill them at this point. And in the Holland situation, it felt just. It felt like something that Holland wanted.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But Lila has the line where she asks Belloc, how do you want to die? And it's just like, it's a kid. Yeah. It's never even crossed his mind.
Yeah.
That was rough.
Well, it may be because I was kind of speed reading at that point. But I was like, it happened really fast. Like there wasn't a lot of time for her to think. There wasn't a lot of like back and forth about like, okay, are you sure? And this is what I'm talking about is like, she's a thief, but she'll also kill.
Yeah.
And now she's killed a child. So it is kind of like, she's definitely on paper morally gray, but you know what her intentions were.
Yeah.
And they were good because at the end of the day, like the kid was like, please just do it.
Yeah.
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 And Holland it was kind of like Holland because Holland wanted it. And the kid had to like kind of beg her.
Mm-hmm. I think what's interesting is that with Holland, we only got this kind of hearsay about what's happening and why he is. But with like Belloc, we get from very beginning why he's with Athos and Astrid. He just didn't bow.
Yeah.
And so he's only standing there at this moment because of an instance of teenage rebellion, which even Athos recognizes. He's like, I was a rebel once. It made it a lot harder to read.
I had a really hard time reading it. I actually was kind of upset by it when I first read it. Like a little upset with Lila, if I'm being honest. Like I felt like there was I mean, it's hard because I feel like, you know, you never know what you're going to do in these instances. And as you say, Bethany, like it happened really fast. And I think in that instant, like it's realistic in the sense that like she didn't have a lot of time to kind of, you know, make any kind of different decision, a creative kind of alternate way to help this kid, because what can she do? She doesn't really know. Mm-hmm. You know, she doesn't know magic. But it was upsetting to me that it just kind of moved on and the book ended and it wasn't really revisited.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of upsetting for me because I felt like it was really traumatic and upsetting for me to read. And I wanted her to maybe like reflect on it at some point.
You needed some kind of closure.
I did. And I felt like I didn't get that.
Yeah. Instead, she's like, let me go find my map.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, what? Like, you just went through like the biggest adventure of your life.
Yeah.
And she did some shit. Thing. Yeah.
And I feel like the death of Belloc is a little bit kind of, I don't know. I feel like it's all kind of tied in as well with like Baron's death.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I feel like she's not getting closure herself with Baron's death. Yeah. And I feel like that maybe that's why that's the only reason I could come up with for why she didn't reflect on, like, I mean, return to it.
Yes. So,
because I feel like she hasn't dealt with that yet. You know,
Lila, when living on the streets, you can't let those things stop you.
Yeah.
And so while I do say that she is honest with herself, and I'll stand by that, she doesn't let herself feel things for too long. So she had that moment where she paused after she killed Powell, and she probably felt a few things, but then she just burned the ship down.
Yeah.
When they find out that Baron's died, and she clearly has a very strong attachment to him. the only really acknowledgement that she has about it is that she asks to be the one to kill Holland. But then after that, it doesn't even really come up again. And so you can tell that she's just kind of like pushing everything down.
Yes.
Like it's going to be this big, ugly sandwich that she's going to poop out later.
And what's interesting is then you have the contrast of Kel when Rhee is hurt and dying, has no hesitation in binding his life to him and almost feels too much. Because she's like, don't do this. Like, you don't want to do this. And he's just like, I'll do what I have to do. So it's almost like she doesn't reflect enough and Rhee almost does too much.
Yeah. She's not letting the hurts of her past ever come up. She never reflects on those things, but she's always honest with her feelings in the moment. Whereas you've got Kel, who's like the opposite, who like won't acknowledge his feelings for her in the moment, but will reflect on his history with the royal family and like how he loves them all so much. Mm-hmm. So like through the book, she gains more compassion the longer she spends time with Kel. Not that she didn't have it before, but I think she feels safer expressing it.
Yes.
And then on the opposite end is that Kel gains like street smarts. So where he didn't bat an eye when those nights were kind of sketchy, like they all had their hoods down and everything, and you couldn't really see their faces. When Lila comes out later, but it's really Astrid, he figures it out. Because at that point, he's been spending so much time with Lila that he's kind of absorbed some of her street smarts as well. And so they're helping each other.
Yeah.
In a few ways.
Absolutely.
So I feel like we've touched on this a couple of times, but I do want to delve a little bit deeper into, I guess, like the ethics behind them closing the doors between the realms.
I think it's fucked up.
Yeah.
Super fucked up. I think it really sucks that, like, because of proximity, White London had to bear the brunt of everything that went down when Black London fell, and that, like, the people couldn't have been, like, brought over before they sealed the doors or saved.
Yeah. I feel like it was kind of like a stupid move. Not, I guess it's more of a hindsight thing, but White London suffered a lot because of the way that they did it.
Yeah.
And so I feel almost like White London is kind of heading toward what went down in Black London.
Absolutely.
It's just like going to be a progression up the universes.
Yeah, like...
Yeah, there needs to be a way that you can work with it all, right? Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of going back and forth with Kel and Holland about controlling it. Mm-hmm. But Kel was not about controlling it. It was about respecting it.
Yeah.
So it's a little political philosophy.
Yeah, I really liked the philosophy of that. I thought it was really moving. But I don't think that necessarily White London's... I'm not sure if I'm sold on the idea that White London, wouldn't have had that as well if they had become subsumed in Red London's, country.
Mm-hmm. Like, closing the doors and having Antari lock them clearly didn't work in their favor because one London has almost no magic left at all. The other one has abused it so aggressively that, its people have disgustingly pale skin and black veins. Mm-hmm. And then Red London is just living it up.
Yeah.
They have no, societal issues at all, do they? They're just a society of privilege and wealth.
Exactly.
Yes, I really liked the imagery of all of the different Londons. Red London being the party city, almost like this red carpet kind of celebration. Yeah. It's even you have the event of Rhee's birthday and just this big party and masquerade. White London is almost just dusted in ash. I was trying to kind of figure out, it's not even so much that it's white. It's almost everything has kind of a wash over it.
Yeah.
And it's grayed out. So White London was more gray. Red London was just colorful. It just had a red river. But White London almost looked like, the city next to the big volcano.
Yes.
Not just shrouded in ash. And everyone's very ghoulish and terrified.
Yeah. I think the difference between gray London and White London in my head image is that Grey London is definitely always raining. And then like it has that like London kind of constant drizzle. And then White London was like aggressively dry.
Yeah.
Dusty and
yeah, there's the line when Kel talks about his when Kel first gets to White London and the first time we see him there, and he talks about how the air was like starving. And so it feels like the air is also just like empty.
Like a dust bowl or something like.
Yeah.
And I think they talked too about like the ground being like really fine. The dirt. I kind of thought of Grey London as being almost brown, like very Dickens.
I did too, actually.
It's like dingy. Yeah.
I think I was thinking like the Sweeney Todd movie, like that version of London.
Yeah.
For Grey London.
But I think that White London is really cold, no, because I think when he gets there, like he can see his breath and the sort of the river is half frozen. You know, it's kind of like everything's moving in slow motion is the kind of feeling I get about it, because like he said that the only thing that is really keeping the people kind of alive, the only magic source is this river, but it's sort of like it's not even stuck. It's not flowing, it's like stuck. Yeah. But it's very slow. And you kind of get the sense that like the people are kind of held in time as well, like wavering between life and death.
Quick question. Doesn't Kel get to rule White London now?
Technically, yeah. I mean, he should have just left Lila back for that. Like, she would have loved that.
Taylin?
I think that's an interesting theory.
Shut up.
I want you to speak more.
Shut up.
Wow, aggressive.
But I'm like literally like, don't they see that? Like they're just gonna leave this country, this London, this world, just after they killed its rulers. Like where are the soldiers that were under this bind?
That's a good question.
Like how does that power? I guess they bound themselves with their own magic, the Danes. But yeah, I really liked, real quick, I just really liked that too, when she walks into the castle or palace or whatever. And she was like, oh, they're like bound, but you have to be really specific about the spell. And so they like just didn't do anything and just like let her walk in.
Yeah, like I actually love that moment too, because she hasn't really learned anything about magic. But she can infer as much because she's been around him long enough. Like when she first gets to Red London and they're kind of split up, she has to kind of make her way for a second. She immediately starts picking up words in this new language. Like she's a genius.
Yep.
Yeah, I noticed that too. She's really smart. She knows how to think on her feet. But
she's not just violent.
Yeah. But back to like the Londons, I guess. Grey London, like we said before, is very much just like London as we know it in this time and space. And then, Red London is just very like flourishing.
I do always love the kind of notion in historical fiction specifically, where it's set in one of our settings and it's like magic used to exist in this realm. Because it kind of, it makes it like feel like it could come back almost, you know?
Well, and even Master Tyrion says it still lives everywhere.
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
Like, ooh.
I love that kind of like touch to us. Yeah. I do really also like, this is not really related to anything we were talking about, how the magic within the stone was personified. Because Kel has a lot of like animistic views where like with the air, when he talks about the starving air, like he personifies the air in that moment, but it's real because the second he lets his magic out, he can feel it absorbing that magic. And so at first it seems just kind of like that abstract animistic view of like nature is real and you need to care for nature the same way that you would a person because of balance within nature, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think at one point he even says like it's not his people don't think of it as a renewable resource or as an endless resource. Like they use it respectfully. Yeah.
But then I love how that becomes literal when we get the point of view sections from the bodies that the stone is possessing. And so we're like animistic views in general can be kind of I don't want to say playful at all, but like they can be almost whimsical in these kinds of environments, in this kind of like in this setting. And you get both sides of that though, because you get Red London where it is very sweet, but then you also get the Stone that's like, I blew through Southwark in an hour. Like literal bodies. Like he possessed and burned through literal bodies in an hour. But it's this object that we're getting the point of view from.
And I love
Absolutely.
I love that it was very like seductive.
Mm-hmm.
There's kind of like hints of just like dark, seducing, also kinky, like
he goes to the
things
brothel,
going on. Yeah.
and he's like, she was a willing vessel, the easiest kind. And I was like, that's a interesting choice of words, Mr. Stone.
Mr. Stone.
But also kind of interesting parallel now I'm thinking about it. Like, I wonder if Red London is a little bit like the upper classes that Lila steals from. They're a little, like they aren't, they feel safe, which is why they didn't see this kind of like mass, what would you call this? A mass.
They call it the sickness is what they call it, right?
Like, that's why they didn't see it coming and didn't know what to do and just kind of scapegoat and everything.
Well, then you have these characters coming from all different Londons. Lila's from gray, Kell is from red, Holland is from white, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they all kind of take on those attributes, right? Kell's very safe, but he's just afraid of dying. Lila is fighting for her life all the time and wants to get out of the rainy gray city.
Yeah. What?
Yeah. And then Holland is literally a slave.
Mm-hmm.
And the Stone is the Black London character. Yeah.
It is.
And you can see how quickly, like, none of them are really impervious to it. You can see that, like, even if they think they are special, like, Black London fell easily.
Yeah.
Like, and we can see that happening, this kind of history playing out through these little moments.
Yes. I really loved how that was illustrated. It really did feel like it happened.
Mm-hmm.
You could really feel it. Yeah.
There's a moment in my notes, I think it was actually when the Stone went to the brothel, where I was like, is it already too late? Like, is Red London about to fall? Like, is that how this series starts? Is one of the Londons falling? Because the brothel was the perfect place to do it. And so I was just, my brain tumbled a little bit, and I was like, if he's giving this to the whole brothel, they're about to have a party this weekend, which means that brothel is about to have a lot of business.
Mm-hmm.
It's about to spread like wildfire. And it did. Like, Parrish deserved better, first of all. But he could feel it. I found that interesting because he was like, it's not the fact that I've only had one drink. Like, I can feel something's up. So, yeah, I think we got kind of almost what would have happened. Mm-hmm. The modern recreation of the beginnings of Black London falling.
I really want to know what Black London used to be like.
Same.
I kind of imagine it being like kind of cool.
I was really sad that we didn't get to see it in the end.
Yeah.
Because the whole time he's like, I've got to go to Black London.
It's like, it's probably like this like heaven or
it's probably
something.
Just super grandiose.
Like this paradise. Right? People are like, yeah, shit, this is what it is. So Black London has created this history of universes.
Love that.
So that they can live in peace.
God, that'd be so nice. Do they fake their own death?
Like Black London is just like, it's just like magic and like glitter. It's just like this magical land.
Everyone poops fairies and butterflies. Yeah. No, I do hope at least that we get more about Black London in the future. And maybe I do think some of it is like coming from Blood and Ash, where we find out that Atlantia isn't quite as...
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like now I'm reading about this like fallen kingdom. I'm like, oh, is it Kell? Is it fallen?
Yeah. Like Black London orchestrated all of the other Londons.
You guys are quick readers.
So that they like...
You're like Kell, you're just learning, Books are Lila and they're schooling you.
Yeah.
And their plots.
I am excited since like we've recorded this now. I can start the next one.
Yeah, me too. I'm like really into it.
That the next book is my favorite. It's fucking incredible. I can't wait for you guys to read it. I'm going to read it alongside of you. Final thoughts?
Yeah.
My final thoughts. I think this is a good. Wait, I don't know. Like, it's hard because I've read all three, but I do think that this was a really excellent first novel. I think that at times I felt like maybe, this is always how it goes with the first anything, a first book, first episode. Like, there's the world building and, you have to kind of be a little patient. But I do think that there was a lot of really excellent kind of character building, a lot of really excellent action, and I think a good ending too. That made me kind of want to see what happens next. Like, I don't really know. When I think back to like finishing this first novel, I didn't really know what was going to happen next at all. And I think that the unknown about that is kind of exciting because the story could play out really in so many different ways.
So then follow-up question on that. Without any spoilers, having read all three books now, would you say that this was a good kind of lead into those? I think
it is a good lead into those. I think that, you're going to see, like I said at the beginning, I think that the characters that you see are consistently important throughout. And I think that's really important for me to like for the holistic picture for all three books. That's important. And I also think that like it's good setup for the characters and that the next book is going to be a really nice fleshing out of some of the things that you're starting to see happen with these characters. Like you're going to really see them grow and change in really, really fun ways.
Okay. So as a first timer, I really did like this book. I did joke with Taylin a couple of times that like without the sex, I was surprised that I stayed as interested for as long as I did, which I think speaks to the testament of the world that V. Schwab has created in here. But each of them is so unique in their own way. But I love that they've got those unifying kind of factors. They've all got the river. They've all, for some reason, got this one tavern in the same spot. Mm-hmm. And so I think she's done a really good job of establishing something that I'm invested in.
Yeah. I really enjoyed, I'm kind of a slut for like aesthetics, like the fucking front of the books. I was like, hell yeah. But also like it followed through and it was just like, I could see it and feel it. It was very like tangible, but also, it just was very tightly written. It was enjoyable to read. I didn't feel like there were any slumps. You were always on to the next thing. Everything had a purpose. Like, it was very satisfying in that way. And I also just, like, really, fell in love with the characters. Like, I really loved Kel, actually. You guys really liked Lila, but there's part of me that will always love a little damsel. Like, like, not like damsel, but like, you have to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
And I like that he's starting to harden a little bit.
I think what's funny is that I kind of viewed Kel as the damsel.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Like Kel is the princess that needs to be broken a little bit.
Yeah.
And Lila's the bad boy that's going to help do that.
Yeah. I love that because I even thought too, like when he was saving Rhee, he's very emotionally driven.
Yeah.
Which was refreshing in a male character.
For sure.
And she's very like, how is this going to help me in the future? Like,
logic.
Yeah.
You guys are really going to enjoy book 2. I just can't wait. You're going to love it.
I'm literally going to start it tonight.
You just say the sexual tension.
As if it wasn't enough already. He kissed her. That was such a sweet kiss. And then they're just holding each other when they get back to Red London, like a couple of teenagers.
Right.
His heart skips a beat when he realizes that she did make it through the door.
Yes. So we talked about how like Lila's kind of always like, oh, I actually need him, right? But he does it through action.
Yes,
he's the one that like, he's the one that like holds her and
he suddenly feels sad that he thinks she didn't make it. Instead of having a long internal monologue like she does about, I'm staying for Kel, but for this reason too.
Convincing herself.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure to talk about this book with you guys. I'm happy to come back anytime.
Yes, please
We're happy
do.
to have you.
It was really fun.
Yeah.
Yes.
I loved that we would have like 3 different perspectives on things.
Yeah.
Like that was kind of fun.
But who's the main character?
How do you pronounce rye? Although we don't have 3 opinions on that, but
We should do the poll. Is it pronounced Rhea or Rye?
Yes.
yeah.
And then for the next book, we'll pronounce it whoever.
Wins.
Yeah, who wins?
And so it'll just be one of us going like, fuck, 3.
Exactly.
Rye.
Yeah.
So
So tell us, listeners, do you think it's Ree or Rye?
Yeah.
Let us know.
All right. So that is the end of book 1. We are going to race through book 2 and bring that to you next week. And that's going to be a
Gathering of Shadows. Meanwhile, you can find us on Instagram at In Bed with Books Pod. And until then, thanks, Taylin, for being with us.
Thank you.
thank you.
And happy reading.
Happy reading.
Bye.
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 I guess we didn't mention that, but that is the course we took.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
18th century studies. So get ready.
Strap in.
And